I want there to be, just like there are athletic trainers in every high school now, which wasn't the case 20 years ago, right? That there would be a mental performance slash mental health specialist in every high school from here on out.
Thank you for tuning in. Thank you for listening. I am your host and coach, Tyler Johnson. And whether you've tuned into Elevate Your Mindset, your game, or just your day, you are in the right place. My guest this episode is the owner of All In Counseling and Mental Performance Coaching, a former athlete turned school administrator for almost a quarter of a century. She now specializes in managing mental health and optimizing mental performance. Please welcome to the Elevate podcast, Dr. Heather Larkin. How are you doing today?
I'm doing great. How are you?
I am doing well. It's great to have you. Coming from the East Coast in Boston, and wanted to at least start out by helping our guests and listeners learn a little bit more about you. But what first led you into the work that you do?
Wow. So, from the time I was born, my father had a basketball waiting for me in my crib. So I really didn't have much of a choice than to play, right? So I played throughout college until I got into a really serious car accident and tore my rotator cuff a couple times. So, you know, I said, how can I keep the passion for athletics in what I do? And so I went to school. I went to UMass, Dartmouth. I got my master's degree in clinical psychology. Then I went to Cal State Fullerton for a while. Then I decided to do a little bit of counseling, but I specialized working originally with kids in foster care and trauma. And so I got a job in the New Bedford Public Schools running a grant for foster kids. And I did that for a long time and I just kept getting promoted and promoted. And I'm like, I'm getting further and further away from what I want to do. You know what I mean? So my youngest son, who is now 20 years old, when he graduated from high school, I said, I'm done. I'm done with education. I want to get back to what I'm doing, what I love to do. And so I met with a lot of mental performance coaches around the country. Laura Wild, Graham Betchart, Seth Pepper, Dr. Patrick Cohn. And I was floored at just how badly this work is needed. So much of mental performance and mental health for athletes, like, yeah, the pros have it, D1 schools have it, but there's hundreds of thousands of young athletes who are suffering, who don't know what it means when their dad tells them, like my dad told me, Heather, get your head out of your ass. Ooh,
You're good. We
get your head in the game, right? And I'm sitting there, 13 years old, being like, I thought it was. I don't know what I'm supposed to be doing. And neither did my dad. My dad didn't know how to teach me that part, right? So I look back at my athletic career and I say, wow, I missed out on a lot of skills and a lot of information on how just to really have that mindset, because 90% of every game we play is mental.
Yeah.
Right. So that's how I got kind of into the mental performance piece of it. And I have to tell you, it is amazing. It is amazing at the changes in these young kids. And I just keep thinking about when, like, this is a tipping point, I think, right? If we can embed mental performance work into high schools, into, D2, D3 colleges, imagine what the competition will be like. It's great now, but imagine.
Yeah.
So,
I think
I truly believe in it.
I think too, when you say imagine, yeah, the competition, and then there's the lifelong well-being outcomes. I think, right? I think I know part of my, I think, struggle from sports to the real world was I couldn't outlift or tackle things in the real world. You had to find
Mhm.
different tools uh, to apply to navigate certain challenges. I mean, when you go back to your playing days, was there, you mentioned your dad had the ball early on, but was there someone other than your dad, a coach or someone that had a more lasting impact on you that you still think about to this day?
I have to be honest with you. It truly was my dad.
Yeah, it's fair.
I had some great coaches. But I'm getting up there in age. So I a long, long time ago. So, female sports really took a back seat to everything else. So,
Yeah.
it was the coaches that I had in high school um didn't know what they didn't know.
Mm,
You know
yeah.
what I mean?
Yeah.
And so, do I think it could have been better? Yes, I think it could have been much, much better. When I got to college, it was a different ball game, and I wasn't prepared for it.
Mm,
I really wasn't prepared for it. I remember sitting in the stands at UMass before I went there, watching the game. And I'm going, I can do that. I can beat them. And then guess what? When I got out there, I was like, holy mackerel. These girls are faster, they're stronger, they are like, I'm not prepared for this. So it was eye-opening. It was really eye-opening, you
yeah.
know.
Yeah. I had that. My dad still for jokes. I think my first day of college football practice, there's a kid from my same hometown. He played wide receiver. I played DB, and he went deep on me. And I remember I was super proud that I could kind of keep up with him as a freshman. And he pulled away, caught the ball, held it in front of me, gave me a little freshman show. I had some confidence and also some humility in the same play. But I think it was that,
Mm-hmm.
okay, like some things are here, but I got a lot to figure out. I got a lot to figure out. And he went to the NFL the next year. So it was like, all right, but
Right.
yeah, it was, but man, it was still that eye opening, man, a lot to learn. Like talent enough is not going to cut it here. There's just a lot more to go on in the game and how you do things. You talked about don't know what they don't know. Let's tangent that to maybe a little discussion around sometimes sports parents that don't know what they don't know. I think I find myself saying that a lot in instances, and sometimes when they push their child. But what are some things that you observe in the sports experience where parents sometimes tend to kind of mess things up?
So I guarantee you, if you lined up 10 athletes, every sport, every level, they can all tell you a story about that dreaded car ride home
Mhm.
after a bad game, right? We've all been there. We've all done it. And I don't want to, I don't want to demean parents, sports parents, because they love their children. They want nothing more than to see them succeed, right? They want to do everything they can for them. But what they end up doing on those dreaded car rides home really diminishes everything. It diminishes their confidence. It increases performance anxiety. The critical every single mistake that they make, they relive it, they go over it. And in the parent's mind, they think they're helping. Well, if I tell them what they did wrong, they'll fix it, right? And if I tell them, like, hey, and guess what? Johnny, did you see Johnny do that? Did you see how he did that? That's how you should do it, right? Those comparisons takes a toll on a young athlete's psyche, right? And so I think that with all good intention, when parents don't know what they don't know about the mental game, mental performance, it does more damage than good. If you look at the statistics, there are hundreds of thousands of young kids playing youth sports. You see it on the soccer fields, you see it on the football fields, you see it, all these little, like, bright eyed kids wanting to like play. Only 7% of those kids continue to play in high school.
Yeah.
Why is that?
Yeah.
Some point it became not fun anymore,
Yeah.
right? And so one of the things that I like to do when I work with parents is what are some ways that you can really support them without the criticism, without the comparing, without the negativity, without those, dreaded car rides home where the kid is sitting in the back seat staring out the window saying, please let this stop, please let this stop,
Yeah.
right? Because the worst thing that can happen, is that they quit altogether, right? Because I know, athletes know, sports bring so much more to a person than just the play.
Oh yeah.
I was, when I was assistant superintendent of schools and I would be hiring for people, if I had two people, same qualifications, but one was an athlete, I'm choosing that person every single time because they have a different way of thinking about things, a different way of problem solving. So, and that's just because they play. Imagine if you teach them mental skills,
Right.
because you said it a little bit earlier, right? Like it's not just about on the court or on the field or in the pool. It's about life.
Yep.
Because at the end of the day, they're human beings who play a sport. They're not basketball, they're not football. They're Johnny and Susie and, you know, Tyler and Heather.
Yeah.
So we have to make sure that we're not doing damage during sports time that's going to trickle into school, academics, social relationships.
Are there when you ask, seeking out ways they can support their kid, I think that was kind of my next question was what are some ways that parents, because I think they don't know what they don't know, because sometimes it's their first child going through competitive sports or through varsity sports or through a club team or through whatever it may be. And it looks very different from what the parents' experience was, or even maybe what their brothers and sisters' experience was 5, 6 years ago. Um, what are some other ways that they can, understand their athlete, or questions they could, bring up with their athlete to understand their experience?
First thing they need to do is listen and watch, right? So what happens after a bad performance or a bad game? What is their child's body language? Is their head down? Are they angry? Are they snappy? Are they like, or do they go isolate? Right. And so just kind of taking in some of that data, like, wow, my kid really struggles after this bad game. So am I going to like drill it into them again, all the mistakes they made? Or am I going to help them to figure it out? When I was younger and I was having kids, right? I always would say, I just want my children to be happy. I didn't know what I didn't know. If I knew what I know now back then, I would have said, I want my children to be balanced because they're going to be anxious. They're going to be sad. They're going to get angry. They're going to be depressed, right? And if I just want them to be happy, I'm not teaching them what they need to be able to roll with the punches, right? Ride the wave, all of those things. When obstacles come and they face adversity, how do they react? And that's what parents need to start teaching their kids how to do. So when I think of that, I think of one of the very basic things that I teach my athletes and I teach parents, and that is to teach their child how to start and continue. And this is from Brian Kane. It is so amazing. He's the best, right? But it is so powerful. If after a game your child didn't do very well, asking simple questions like, all right, so how do you think you did in the game? I think I sucked. I missed my shots. I didn't score my 20 points, right? All right. So what's something that you did in this game you need to stop doing? What'd you do that you were like, oh, I got to stop doing that? Well, I got to stop hesitating before I shoot. If I'm open, I got to shoot. You're right. You do. What's something that you didn't do? You need to make sure you do it in the next game, kiddo. Well, I wasn't talking. I didn't call for the ball. Right. What's something you did awesome today that you need to keep doing in every single game? Well, you know what? I got back on defense really, really good after I missed that shot. Yes, you did. And you made that play, didn't you? I did. All right. So, because after a bad game, everything's swirling around in their little heads. What heads? I don't care if you're a Pop Warner or you're Patriots, right? You make a mistake that is, you know, damaging to your team, damaging to the game, it's swirling around in there, right? So afterwards, if you can, and that's a whole nother thing, right? Letting go of mistakes, process
Yeah.
over outcome. But if you can get your child to really start thinking about it in simpler terms, what do I need to stop doing? What do I need to start doing? What do I need to continue doing? Instead of I suck,
Yeah.
right? They start to own it. Okay, yeah, I got to try this. I got to do this. I remember coach told me I need to do that. And they become the owners of their performance, not their parents' expectations, their parents' opinions, their parents' comparisons. I own this.
Yeah. There's another one I love, the start, stop, continue. Another one I like with athletes I'll do is beat it, better, best. And what was your best part? What did you do better this time? And then what was the thing that just, let's beat it? Maybe it was something internal or external that was like, I could do without that. And I think sometimes it's a man, I could do without those, okay. Cause then it also shows you, okay, well, what if we have another game where the fans and coach are like that? What are we going to do? Like,
Right.
and so it still gives you this information of how to, but I like that sometimes. What did you do? It lacks, some of the constructs of the other one, but it also gets in like, what did you improve upon from last time? What's better, and
If you can, the mindset has to be, am I better today than I was yesterday? And how can I be better tomorrow? Right? How do I move that needle each day? Because, you know, how many, you talk to young players, right? They're like, my goal is to be in the NFL. I want to play for the Celtics or I want to play for the Red Sox, right? I want to be a pro. All right. And they think it's like this, right? No, honey. It is like,
yeah,
right?
yeah,
It's a journey.
yep,
It's a journey.
for sure.
So
Um, and I know you've, as a counselor and therapist, right? Could you talk to us a little bit about maybe sometimes again, maybe parents or coaches, maybe the difference from, uh, mental performance coaching to when a kid needs some counseling and therapy around other constructs. Can you talk about kind of, where those two align and where their twos are a little bit different?
yeah, definitely. So, again, mental health in general with athletes, there's such a stigma attached to it. We're supposed to be strong, we're supposed to be resilient, we're supposed to be gritty, we're supposed to be able to like run through walls. Well, guess what? That's not always the case. It's not always the case. And so being able to discern between, is this a performance issue or is this a mental health issue? I do that with a lot of interviewing, a lot of like pre-work to kind of figure out, because sometimes I think it's mental performance, or the parent calls me to work with an athlete for mental performance, and I find out like, holy man, like this is much bigger. This is much more. They are depressed. They do have, more generalized anxiety because it's flowing into school. But it really is difficult at times to kind of point it. So
Yeah,
I love part of my practice, is simply mental health. My other part of my practice is mental performance. I have this group in the middle who are getting both,
sure.
right?
Yeah,
Because a lot of the skills that I'm teaching for mental performance, I'm also teaching in counseling for, people who have never picked up a ball in their life.
Yeah.
And I'm also using strategies and interventions that I use with in my counseling profession to augment the mental performance piece.
Sure.
So I think I think it's fascinating and I love it.
Yeah. That's especially the last several months, it's a very sports psychologists and therapists that I've talked to is a very common theme that they receive a kid and they're told from the parents it's performance related. And the stories I often hear that they find with, with less than a month or some time with that child that it's not really sports related.
Mhm.
Could be sometimes as simple as they got dumped and they didn't talk to their parents about it 3 weeks ago, and that's what's changed. And sometimes it's been things of greater significance of depth. But I think it's. Do you think that? I guess my mind kind of is curious about that. Do you think that is because the way our society and lifestyles are sometimes that the interactions that we get with our kid are sometimes limited at the older levels to we're only observing them. We're not observing them during school. We're not observing them with social play. We're often as parents are only observing them in competitive sport. And
Mhm.
sometimes I think that's my thing. It's like, well, that's the only time you're really observing and connecting with your kid is at sport, not at the table or not over these things. Then of course you're going to think it's got to be basketball, right? Because that's the
Right.
only thing you're observing in their life on a consistent basis. Do you find it can be that sometimes where it's just the parents have limited observation or limited relationship?
Definitely.
Case,
Especially, I mean, no, I'm not trying to, I'm just talking kind of demographics, right?
yeah,
I worked for years in New Bedford, Massachusetts. It is the whaling capital of the world, Moby Dick, right? New Bedford, Mass. But there's a lot of poverty and there's a lot of societal issues there. And, a lot of parents are working 2 and 3 jobs to be able to, and maybe they can't make it to their children's games, right? So I've come to realize a story is one person's story and everybody has different nuances and different
yeah,
issues and different kind of, and so it's really unique and it's
100%.
really, you know dependent upon so many different things that you have to kind of figure out. But athletes want those quick fixes, right?
Yeah,
And like with some of my pro athletes, it's, sometimes my mindset will be like performance, performance, and they'll be like, no. And they'll have like all these other issues going on. And I'm like, okay, so I have to kind of put that on the back burner. So you got to kind of always meet your clients where they're at. You know what I mean? Um, And, for parents, I think it's just, they just want so badly for their children to do well in life, right?
yeah, yeah.
So,
Like you said, I don't find many parents that are uh, not trying to do the best for their kid.
no, and
Um,
oftentimes they do what they know, they
yeah,
do what they learn.
yep,
I told my son, get your head out of your behind about 56 times because when he was playing football, because that's what I was told.
yeah,
So that's what I thought.
yeah.
Um, so
Which yeah, I got that told to me too, and I was like, I think they're trying to tell me to focus, but I don't know if my ass is the right place for that right now. Like it's kind of,
that's
it's also kind of confusing. Like, some of the old sayings we catch. Going from old sayings to new sayings, and looking at, your website, one of the things I'd never kind of heard these terms, I wanted you to share about them and expand. But uh, helping athletes alleviate negative symptomology. Can you explain to us what that is and how we can start to hopefully alleviate that?
Yes, definitely. So when I talk about negative symptomology, I'm really talking about those negative thoughts, the self-doubt, the lack of confidence, the poor self-esteem, um, the and that's just kind of the primary levels of negative symptomology. Oftentimes when these things go unaddressed, negative symptomology being poor academic performance, lack of socialization, all of these things. But I think, I always tell my clients, like, you have to think about your thoughts. Like, you have to almost, and I'll describe it like when I'm doing mental performance, I'm like, it's like, the angel and the devil on your shoulder, and you got to fight it. You have to fight that devil with your facts, right? Because this one's going to say, "Oh my God, you suck so bad today. Um, Coach is going to bench you. My dad's disappointed in me. Um, I didn't meet the expectations. The that stupid reporter is going to say something negative about me." It becomes so catastrophic in their heads, right? That was negative symptoms, and it just trickles into everything else that they do. So
Yeah. Yeah. It's like you and you said, think about your thoughts. I think even in my own journey of life, I think, yeah, can you observe yourself? And it's a difficult skill when you've never been taught it or understood. And I I think, I guess kids sometimes don't watch The Simpsons as much as probably I did, but Homer Simpson would always have the two. A lot of times in The Simpsons, those two voices showed up for Homer. One's Duff and Donuts and the other one's doing, what's probably best for Marge. But I think I think also for parents to have a conversation, because when I even meet with a lot of student athletes for the first time, when we talk about self-talk and that empowering side, do you know the other side, right? And they're like, oh yeah, oh yeah. Like the way sometimes their eyes just are like, wait, I have those too. Like, and I think, Trevor Moad once he would address athletes like, hey, how many of you talk to yourself? And not everyone would raise your hand. He's like, well, that's okay. If you didn't put your hand up, I know the rest of you are thinking there right now, hey, I don't talk to myself, do I? Wait, am I doing it right now? Wait, I'm doing it. I did. It's like, right. So we're always doing it, but if we can teach kids how to do the right way.
yeah, that's thousands of thoughts going through our head every single day. Which ones register the most with us?
Yeah. And I think,
The negative ones.
yeah, and to go back to your car ride conversations and things, it's like when we can have, when you hear them, like, okay, is that a negative thing or right? You can start to give some filter to like let them process what they're sharing with you, I think. And and so that's so powerful. Because we all have negative is powerful. And if we're not proactive and intentional about being aware and acknowledging that, we put ourselves at a deficit in combating it. Um, Especially if we're going to get into a competitive space, I think.
Exactly.
Um, and you talked about, those things that negative symptomology can do. Uh, what are some ways that we can help our athletes that we coach or our kids build real self-confidence and build self-esteem in a meaningful way that isn't attached to sports outcomes?
Right. So self-esteem is how we view ourselves, right? Am I a good person? Am I trustworthy? Am I smart? Do I work hard? Right? That's our self-esteem, how we feel about ourselves. Our confidence is so different, right? Because your self-esteem is this. Confidence, for me, if you ask me to write a book, I am highly confident that I can. If you ask me to do calculus, I am very sure that I cannot do that. I have zero confidence in math, right? So we can be highly confident in some areas and lack confidence in others. It wasn't until I got to high school that I realized I do in fact have a left hand. Exactly. So as I was playing, I had zero confidence in dribbling with my left hand until I practiced and practiced and practiced, right? And it's the same with your mental game. You have to practice it and practice it and practice it. So um I think if we can help our athletes understand that confidence is simply put, trusting in your skills, right? So if there's an area of your game that you don't feel really confident in, you need to seek more training, you need to seek more information, you need to practice it more, right? Whereas you might not need to, you know, do it anywhere else, right? I am highly confident in my speed,
Yeah.
but my I drop the ball a lot when I'm playing receiver. So trusting in your skill and just simplifying things.
Yeah.
That's where everything goes awry, is when everything is like worst case scenario. We're perseverating on things. We can't get this out of our head, right? We got to simplify it.
Yeah.
We can handle things so much easier when it's like this before it gets like this.
For sure. As we wrap up, one last question. If you could wave a magic wand and change something about youth and high school sports, what would you wave your wand and magically want to happen tomorrow?
I want there to be, just like there are athletic trainers in every high school now, which wasn't the case 20 years ago, right? That there would be a mental performance / mental health specialist in every high school from here on out.